Hey guys, it's Joby. I'm sorry I'm being so quiet, but today I'm going to make a video about tubes. Now the reason why we had to be so quiet is we wouldn't want any guitar players to hear us talking about tubes, because they will probably go batshit fucking crazy. I might say something like, this old Muller 12AT7 is an amazing tube. Somebody down there is probably going to disagree. So we have to be kind of quiet about the whole tube thing. Anyway, you guys, we're going to go down to the basement. Maybe less guitar players will hear us down there. I'm going to show you my old Mercury Magnetics Tube Tester. And I'm going to talk a little more about tubes. Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's Joby, and I thought I would show you this because my friend Travis today had mentioned maybe me doing a video about tubes. The truth of the matter is, tubes and getting into tubes is kind of a slippery slope, and I do not say that lightly, because what happens is you end up with 50, 60-year-old technology in your house. Don't get me wrong, I love this thing. This is a Mercury self-service tube tester. I am not actually sure of the year. The serial number is 19369. If anybody has any more information, that would be really cool. Up here on top, that is a tube chart that lists all the different types of tubes that this machine tests. Right there is the meter, and basically what you do is you select what type of tube you're using with this knob, and you have your meter setting. So basically I'll show you how this thing works. Let's pull out a tube here. I have some old Rogers 12AX7s. I believe that these were made by Muller. And basically what you do is you go up to the tube chart and you find 12AX7 and you see that it's setting F and socket number 20, and you want to set the meter to 39. So first thing we do is turn this thing on, and then we set the meter first. Now we have our meter set to 39, and we're going to put our 12AX7 into socket 20, and you give it a minute to warm up. So far I'm not getting a gas light, so the tube isn't leaky. But basically what you do then is press for your test. So we get like an 83 on the meter. So that is actually a totally good 12AX7. Believe it or not, I got this massive piece of equipment for free. I was at a tube show in Marshall probably about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago at this point. And it was the end of the day, and a guy had this beast for sale. Just for shits and giggles, I said, what do you want for it? And he said, take it, it's yours. But let's take a look at the rest of this thing, because it's pretty cool. Okay, so to me, this is kind of one of the coolest parts. Is it's got all these drawers, and I'll try to zoom in there for a second, that you can basically store your tubes in. So I got a bunch of random 12AX7s and some EL84s and some 12AT7s. These are a bunch of NOS Jan Phillips I bought. And then in this drawer have my collection of power tubes. Got a bunch of Mesa EL34s, some JJ EL34Ls, some JJ6L6s, a couple of GZ34 rectifier tubes. And some 5U4 GB Mesa, Electro Harmonics rather, tubes. Pretty cool, you can store them in there. There's this big door. There's a lock on it. I don't have the key, so it doesn't do me a whole lot of good. Look at the size of this monstrosity, man. I mean, geez, I have to keep backing up to even think about getting it in the shot. Let me go the other way and maybe we could see this beast. This is the kind of thing that happens when you start getting into tubes. You end up with this giant, ancient, yet awesome technology in your house. Pretty much eating up space. There's much smaller tube testers. And let me tell you what, moving this one to this house basically was enough to make me not want it. So yeah, quite honestly guys, my suggestion to you about tubes is to not get obsessed with them. Really the best thing you can do is buy your tubes from a reputable tube seller. I like Tube Depot, they've been really good to me, as well as Antique Electronics Supply. They've always had decent tubes when they arrive. You know you're not going to get junk from them, and if you do, in most cases they will replace it, so that's great. Brand wise, you know, it's really hard to say. You're pretty much going to be able to trust Electro Harmonics tubes. JJ tubes, usually pretty solid. Tongue Soul. Most of these tubes are all made at the same exact factories anyway. They just have different brand names on them because there really isn't too many tube companies left anymore. Unfortunately, the last I knew, the SED factory closed down, so you can't really find Wing C's anymore. And vintage tubes is a whole other racket, man. The first thing I can recommend to you is if you see a giant lot of tubes for sale, really probably don't want to buy them. The odds are there isn't going to be any guitar tubes in there. The tubes you're going to find are going to be for TVs and stuff. The guitar tubes have probably been pilfered long, long ago. There are still random rare occasions where you're going to come across some cool stuff, and going to tube shows is super fun. And you know, like I showed you a minute ago, I did find a bunch of Jan Phillips 12 AT7s, maybe 16 or so, and only one of them was bad. Sometimes you can get lucky at a tube show, but don't go buy a big box of tubes off some guy on Craigslist, and don't sit around there just pulling tubes out of your amp and sticking another tube in and pulling the tube out and sticking another tube in. You're probably going to do more damage to the amp that way, honestly, and you're not going to get that much of a difference in tone. Really, you don't want to be messing with the sockets. My orange amp died on me a couple years ago at a pretty big show for us, and the reason was the tube socket was broken. That wasn't for me monkeying with it, it was because the guy I bought it from stuck tubes in it and never got it biased. So one of the tubes was running super duper hot and it literally melted the solder off the joints on the tube socket. Once I bought new tubes and had my favorite tech, Jim Dean, go through and fix the thing and rebias it, it's been rock solid ever since. If you need to replace power tubes and your tubes need to be rebiased, in which most cases they do, unless you have like an EL84 amp. Some amps have automatic biasing now, and you can even switch out tubes. If you have one of those, go ahead, man, goof around with your tubes, pluck them in, see what happens. But if you have an amp that requires your tubes to be biased, I would seriously suggest taking it to a tech because number one, tube amps will kill you. Getting inside those things and touching just one wrong thing and you can die. And I'm not just talking get a bad gnarly shock. You can seriously die if one of those capacitors discharges into you. So, you know, be super careful if you're going to monkey around with that stuff. But from my experience, the difference in tone is so minimal. You can tell the difference. There's I can't lie to you, there is a difference. You find an old Mullard, you stick it in your amp, and you're gonna be like, man, that just sounds better. A lot of the new tubes just aren't of the same quality because they're not being made for military use. And the old stuff was made for military usage and it was built to last a lifetime. 6V6s, if you can find some old RCAs, they're probably going to sound amazing. Wing C's for most any power tube is going to sound great. But these are all just opinions, and there's a million opinions on tubes, so don't take anything I say as Bible truth. You do have to figure these things out for yourself. There's something in the guitar world called, like, I believe it's called the final 15%, and that's where you go with tubes. That's where you go with like an extremely well-made instrument. That's where you go with boutique amplifiers, boutique guitar pedals, is the final 15%. Right there, that kind of says it all. You don't get a lot out of it, especially with tubes. You'll really learn if you do start monkeying with them how little difference they actually can make. You know, it really depends. Get online. There's a million forums. In fact, don't get online. Don't get online because you're gonna have me telling you this, and you're gonna have 15 other guys telling you that, and 20 other guys telling you this. That's why it's a rabbit hole you just don't even want to go down. And really, like I was telling my friend Trav earlier, you don't really need to replace your tubes. Like, for a long time in most cases, power tubes do wear out, but preamp tubes like your 12AX7s, 12AT7s, 12AU7s, 12AY7s, even EF86s, which are a little more finicky, but they rarely go out. If they do, you're going to know it. They're going to get microphonic and your amp's going to squeal. The tubes that normally go out are going to be your power tubes. And even those rarely go out. You will usually know when they're going out because your amp's going to show a massive drop in volume. So if you're not noticing that massive drop in volume or some sort of massive change in tone to your amp, you probably don't need to replace your tubes. But when you do, please take it to a certified tech and have them do it. Unless you yourself are an electronics wizard, then great. But I am not, so I let guys that know what they're doing handle that for me. I think that's all I really have to say about that for now, guys. So anyway, thanks for listening. Take it easy. Peace.